Story time. I will begin with a brief recollection out of the Confession of St. Patrick, and I will follow with a story of my own. But after I came to Ireland, every day I had to tend sheep, and many times a day I prayed. The love of God and his fear came to me more, and my faith was strengthened, and my spirit was moved, so that in a single day I would say as many as 100 prayers, and almost as many in the night. And this even when I was staying in the woods and on the mountains. And I used to get up for prayer before daylight, through snow, through frost, through rain, and I felt no harm, and there was no sloth in me, as I now see, because the Spirit within me was then fervent. And there one night I heard in my sleep a voice saying to me, "It is well that you fast, soon you will go to your own country." And again, after a short while, I heard a voice saying to me, "See, your ship is ready." And it was not near, but at a distance of perhaps 200 miles. And I had never been there, nor did I know a living soul there. And then I took to flight, and I left the man with whom I had stayed for 6 years. And as I went, I began to pray. And before I had ended my prayer, I heard one of them shouting behind me, "Come, hurry, we shall take you on in good faith. Make friends with us in whatever way you like." And so, on that day, I refused them for fear of God, but rather hoped that they would come to the faith of Jesus. Still I went, and after 3 days we reached land, and for 28 days we traveled through deserted country. And they lacked food, and hunger overcame them. And the next day the captain said to me, "Tell me, Christian, you say that your God is great and all-powerful. Why then do you not pray for us? As you can see, we are suffering from hunger. It is unlikely indeed that we shall ever see a human being again." I said to them, full of confidence, "Be truly converted with all your heart to the Lord my God, because nothing is impossible for my God, that this day he may send you food on your way until you be satisfied, for he has abundance everywhere." And with the help of God, so it came to pass, suddenly a herd of pigs appeared on the road before our eyes, and they killed them, and there they stopped for 2 nights to fully recover their strength. So ends the miraculous recounting from the Confession of St. Patrick. When I was 11 years old, I had an imaginary friend. His name was Tristan. It was the strangest name I could think of at the time. Tristan was blue, and he had green hair. If you've ever seen Captain Planet, you have an idea of what my imaginary friend looked like. Tristan knew everything, but rarely spoke. He was a good listener. He had many different wild animals as pets. Sometimes he would let me play with them. Tristan used to come with me when I was with my mother on her way to classes. When I was 11 years old, my mother had started at the University of New Mexico to pursue a bachelor's degree. Those classes were boring for me to sit through, and while my mother sat in class, I often sat outside with my imaginary friend, Tristan. He kept me company. Sometimes we would wander the hallways, noticing the grown-ups with their backpacks and their strange ways of talking. Sometimes we would just sit there together. I knew Tristan could hear me. He made the time go by so much faster. It was during this time in my life, walking across the street with my family, that I encountered a small moth whose wings were wet from water. The moth was unable to fly. I picked the moth up with my hand and gently dried its wings with my breath. It was hard to describe, but in that brief moment, I found myself falling in love with this tiny creature that I cared for. After it could fly, it stayed with me briefly, staying near my hand, and I couldn't help but feel it loved me too. Almost as an acknowledgement of my care, it flew slowly above my head and then away, but to my dismay, into the path of an oncoming bus. I was overcome with fear for my new friend, and I forgot about my own well-being. You know, I jumped right in front of that bus to catch the moth that I loved. Luckily, my father was there and pulled me back. I lived to tell the story. But on that day, I was not grateful. I was angry with my father for saving my life. The moth got hit by the bus and died. I wept. And I soon learned how important it was that I survived, but I was still sad because I loved that tiny creature. I never could muster a feeling of gratitude for that moment. Part of me loved the moth so much that I wanted to tie my life to it. Well, nobody I told the story to could understand what I was talking about. How could I love a moth, and why wasn't I happy that I had been saved? No one understood except Tristan. I didn't know it in my imagination, but Tristan was there with me. He had seen everything that happened. After the moth died, I had no one to talk to about these strange feelings but my imaginary friend. He saw and he knew, and the simple presence of an imaginary friend was all the comfort I needed.